30702.
So I wouldn't want to be my producer's neighbor, not because he's not a nice person, not because I'm sure he's a very generous and good neighbor, but he did go and buy a second-hand guitar the other day, and he went to go and buy it at Cash Converters, and he was struck by the number of people who'd gone into Cash Converters not to buy things, but to sell things. Let's talk to Richard Mukheibir, who's the managing director of Cash Converters. There should be some sort of human rights constraint for people's neighbors, Richard Mukheibir, when you sell guitars to radio producers who really have no business handling musical instruments. I don't know if we could form some kind of restriction. But on a serious note, are you seeing lots of people bringing in stuff to sell? Is it typical of a recessionary environment like we're going through right now?
Bruce, good evening, and to your listeners, and thank you again for the opportunity. In fact, that was our thinking when we went into this pandemic at the end of March. That when we came out, effectively our access to cash part of the business, where we give people money when we buy from them, would spike quite radically. But up until now, that has not been the case. And maybe I'll just share some numbers with you. Our June retail turnover was 94% of June 2019. So we were running ahead of last year in February. We crashed during March because we had 5 less days worth of trading. We went to zero turnover in April, and June we ended up at 94% of 2019, which we thought was a really good result and surprised on the upside.
And when you talk about turnover, it means that this is stuff that you are selling, not the stuff, obviously
Correct.
The stuff that you're buying on a regular basis because people bring in the stuff they don't want or don't need anymore. Is there any sort of indication, though, that there are many desperate sellers in the South African economy, people who are bringing in the family silver, for want of a better thought?
So make no mistake, the situation that COVID-19 has put us as a business and every South African into is dire. I think what is happening, however, is that it is taking longer to represent in the context of people wanting cash, and our thinking is along this line, and I'm not sure if we're right or not at this stage of the game, but our thinking is that we spent, 100 days, just less than that in lockdown. The average South African couldn't leave their home. We couldn't spend money on cigarettes, on booze, on KFC chicken. The banks were very good with providing cash flow relief. And as a consequence, I think there was quite a lot of cash in the average South African household. And when we came out of lockdown, that was a degree of pent-up demand. And given that our retail business is a value business, we sell product in our retail stores at around about half the price you'd expect to pay new, with a 6-month guarantee. We had a very, very strong demand in retail. And the flip side of that is we had a relatively soft reopening in our purchasing business and in our money lending business. Our secured money lending business in June was only really just shy of 60% of what it was last year. So we think that up until, let's say, the end of June, beginning of July, there was actually quite a bit of cash in the market. I'm sensing now, however, is that those holidays that the banks have provided, the 3-month cash flow holiday on bonds, etc., the fact that one can get out and one can get a meal outside of home, I'm beginning to sense that might well start causing a shortage of cash in the average household.
And what about people paying you back on the loans they take with you? Because you do offer microloans in the same way as
Correct.
an African bank, in the same way as a Capitec does. And I mean, Capitec told us their profits are going to be down 70% this year as a result of mounting defaults. And we spoke to Basani Maluleke at African Bank last night, and she was saying that their experience also is in a big increase, and they've had to take big provisions when it comes to the loans that they've made.
Yes, absolutely. Fortunately, our unsecured money lending business is a very small portion of our business, but we took a decision towards the end of February, early March, when we saw this coming, to effectively switch that business off. and we stopped the money lending during the course of the latter part of March and April, collected the book, and started again in May very, very tentatively, only with our top-end customers. And effectively during the course of the lockdown in April, our IT department was frantically restructuring our applications and implementing new scorecards, implementing new collection methods that has caused us to effectively restart it in May and June, albeit very tentatively, but the results have been extremely positive. Our customers are paying us back better than they were prior to lockdown.
So when you look at what you're anticipating for the full year, are you anticipating a recessionary sort of performance that would suggest that while you'll be down for the year, the wheels certainly haven't come off at Cash Converters?
Absolutely. We're enormously fortunate. Our business model is probably more valid going forward than in the past. And given that we've been operating in South Africa for 25 years, almost 40 worldwide as an international brand, I think we're in an enormously fortunate position. We spent a lot of time during lockdown refining our business model, working on digitization. In fact, we've digitized just about the whole business in the last 120 days. We do see into the future that life is going to be incredibly hard. People are going to be focusing on each and every rand that they spend and going to be wanting value for money for that rand. And yes, it's going to be tough. I think the balance of this year is really all about survival in our world. And we hope that if we come out of this at the end of 2020, we can start rebuilding the business and helping rebuild the economy in 2021.
Managing Director of Cash Converters, Richard Mukheibir, this evening. Have you cleared out your garage? Have you taken the time during lockdown to sort out the stuff you want versus the stuff you need versus the stuff that certainly you don't want and you'd like to get rid of? And would you ever be seen going into a Cash Converters? Would you find it a little bit not my kind of place? I've been to Cash Converters. It's great. I mean, you know, the musical instruments that my producer partook in, there are lots of those sorts of things, lots of power tools and all kinds of knickknacks and bobs and things. I didn't buy anything at the time I was there, but certainly the staff who were there from head office, whose visit coincided with mine, we're looking for deals on all kinds of things. So maybe something worth considering when you're looking to buy new stuff is to buy new stuff from somebody who's owned it before. Feel a bit grim about that, or is that just the environment that we're in?